I stand before you as the President of the United States and a proud American. I also stand before you as the son of a man from Africa. The blood of Africa runs through our family, and so for us, the bonds between our countries, our continents, are deeply personal.
That was former U.S. President Barack Obama at the 2014 U.S.-Africa summit there. Now, it's fair to say that America's relations with the continent have been warmer, but offensive remarks about African countries made by the former leader Donald Trump took them to a new low. Now, U.S. President Joe Biden has told African leaders that his country is committed to Africa's future. The U.S. is looking to position itself as a reliable trade partner, including calling for the African Union to become a permanent member of the G20.
The U.S. is all in on Africa's future. That has been the message at the first U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit in almost 8 years. After decades of inconsistent engagement, President Biden called for a renewed, long-term partnership with the African continent.
I emphasize shared success and opportunity, because when Africa succeeds, the United States succeeds. Quite frankly, the whole world succeeds as well.
His recipe for success? Pledging more than $55 billion to support African democracy, food security, trade, and infrastructure. Biden's push to frame the US as a reliable partner comes against a backdrop of rising competition between China and the US. Over the past 2 decades, China has become Africa's largest economic partner, investing trillions into infrastructure and development. The US is now trying to catch up. Critics say it is forcing African nations to choose between the major powers. The White House insists that the summit is not an attempt to counter China's sizable influence in Africa. But the spectre of great power competition looms large nonetheless.
49 African leaders attended the summit. DW's Washington Bureau Chief Michaela Kufner was there and caught up with Namibia's President Hage Geingob.
What is this summit about? About recognition of Africa, or is it purely trade for you?
Both. First, Africa does exist, and other countries, Europe, at Africa-Europe summits, naming the China-Africa, Russia-Africa. So it was very important that all the United States come on board to have Africa-US summit. A summit is not just sake of discussing good relations, but we're now going to the second phase of our development, that of economic development. We therefore want to tell the world Africa is open to do business. We are there to develop our own countries, but we have to hold hands with the world so that they can come and invest. We have all kinds of materials, but investment must not just come as in the past to come and take the raw materials and take them out and add value outside. It must add value addition. It must be done in Africa to transfer technology and create jobs. That's the idea. So it was a good summit. We had good meetings with the Secretary of State on Africa's problems, where there are problem areas like in Mozambique, in DRC, and so on. And also forthcoming elections in Zimbabwe. So I think it was a good visit for me.
Well, speaking earlier at the summit, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said China and Russia were expanding their influence in Africa in a way that he said could be destabilizing.
Russia, we see Russia continuing to peddle cheap weapons, and also we see Russia employing mercenaries across the continent, and that is destabilizing as well.
Well, DW also asked Namibia's president what he thought about the U.S. claims of China and Russia interfering in the affairs of African nations. Have a listen.
The message throughout also from Secretary Blinken here has been that this is not about making African countries choose between China and Russia and the US. At the same time, we saw Defense Secretary Austin stress that Russia certainly and China are destabilizing, particularly Russia, the African continent. So do you feel like you have to choose between partners now, or do you can have it all and work with all?
I would say is that we must recognize us as sovereign states, not any more colonial territories where somebody else will decide for us or influence us. We are sovereign states. Some of us fought for our independence. We value it. And therefore, to be said you are either used by this power or that one is not there. We are meeting as sovereigns. We are meeting as friends. We're talking about what U.S. can do in Africa and what Africa can offer the United States.